our previous section, we discussed link and script tags and the hierarchy associated with them. In this section, we're going to dive into divs, dividers, and dividers are used as containers to logically group HTML tags. They serve no visual purpose. So if I put in a div over here on the right, you won't see it. So let's put one in there, div. It is solely for linking CSS to a group of HTML tags or for containing and grouping tags. That's all it does. I would like to introduce you to the class attribute. And so the way we're going to do it is we're going to type in div and then dot, and we're going to give it a name. So this first name we're going to give is box. Okay. And so we're going to put an H1 inside and we're going to say box one. Okay. So box one, let's go ahead and delete this hello world. Box one is an H1 nested inside of a div. If we put another box one, for example, on this page, you can see that it's displayed one on top of the other. Let's rename this one to box two. All right. Then we'll do it one more time. We'll have three boxes. Name this box three. All right. So if we wanted to logically group these divs together, because they're all boxes, we could do this. Div, and we're going to say container. All right. And inside of it, we're going to move this up. There we go. So now you have three boxes and they're inside of a div with an attribute class called container. And then you have a div called class box. Let's link our main.css back into this file. Let's do that. It's good practice. So link, and then we're going to say dot to say this directory slash CSS slash main.css. You can see it's auto-filling. And now the background turned purple. Okay. So let's go into our main.css and clear this property out. We want to give it a border. We're going to give everything a border. And say border 1 pixel, solid black. And we're going to close that out. I'm going to save it. And so now the preview doesn't really update as expected. And this is what I was saying, that the browser is a better way to do this, but I want to show you quick, easy, dirty way to do this. Okay, so we have three boxes. We have a class called box, but these aren't really boxes, are they? They fill the entire container from left to right. And you can see that these borders actually are each element. So H1 runs from the start to the end of this container in a horizontal direction. And then they're listed in order, one on top of the other. I would like to introduce you to a spreadsheet that I created to help make a little bit more sense out of how to use Flexbox. This is solely an introduction to Flexbox. I'm going to assign to you a really fun project that you're going to do right after this video. But first, just try to follow along. Okay, these three boxes, we want to make them actually boxes, right? So let's go to our main.css and we're going to say dot box. Now, dot specifies a class. Hashtag specifies an ID. So box one, for example. So I could do ID equals box one. And this is very specific because there can only be one ID of box one. So I want to demonstrate hierarchy here by saying box background color blue, for example. And then we're going to go to box 1, the specific ID, and we're going to say background color red. Now let's go over to our divs preview, and you can see that box 1 is red while the others are blue. And this is because I added this. Now, CSS can be commented the same way you did HTML with command/ and highlighting it. And you can see that the actual commenting style is different. Instead of the arrows, it's /* and then it closes with */. All right, so now all the 3 boxes are blue, and the boxes are the entire container that the box H1 lives in. So let's go ahead and delete this, leave it out. Let's give each one of these a margin, 10 pixels. Now, if you're not sure what a margin is, the outside of a container, where padding is the inside. So see how the space inside the container before the element is a little bit broader than it was before? This is padding. So margin is on the outside, padding is on the inside. And you can get really specific with padding. You can say padding top 20 pixels, for example. Put a space there. All right. And now you can see this spacing of the top is more equal than it was before. Now let's get rid of this margin and padding because I don't want to get too far off track. We're going to add a height. We're going to say 100 pixels. We're going to add a width. Say 100 pixels. And we're going to save. Now we're going to go back over to our preview. Now you can see that these are actually boxes. Let's add that margin back in. It looked much better. Margin, 10 pixels. That's space. All right. So now we have that margin and everything looks a little bit better. Okay, so what if I wanted these 3 boxes to sit horizontally side by side? The easiest way to do that in Bootstrap is come over here and add a class. Now, Bootstrap is basically an opinionated CSS class library. So you can add classes that already exist. Now I want to give you a demonstration of what that looks like. So we're going to go over here to our Bootstrap documentation and we're going to go to grid. Grid is basically a way to say, hey, these need to be specified in a container and then provided rows, just like we did on tables. We did tables and we specified this is a row, a header, etc., etc. So let's do this. So we're going to add a new class called row, and inside of it, we're going to have columns. All right. So div dot row, and that's going to add a new class called row. And then let's move all of our boxes inside of that div. We moved it up. Now you can see we made a row, and how do rows act? They act from left to right, start to finish, or start to end. And these are spread out from starting at the beginning, and then you have 100 pixels wide, 10 pixel margin, and then so on. But they're not really centered or spread out. So we'll add inside of our class, you can have multiple classes as values here. They're all separated by space. So let's add COL. Okay. And COL. All right. Now we have 3 boxes. Now it's no longer 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And this demonstrates responsiveness. So as this screen gets larger, these will expand to fill the container. And they're equally spread because we're just specifying column. Now I want to break this down further by introducing you to a spreadsheet that I created to make this a little simpler. In this spreadsheet, I already laid out how Flexbox, specifically the CSS grid, works. For Bootstrap, logically make containers up to 12 blocks wide. And it always starts from start to end, or if you're doing vertically layout, start to end down at the bottom. So in this little diagram, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so you can get a better view. That's a little too small. There we go. All right. In this drawing, this here represents the window or the browser. The way Flexbox works is you'll have a container. So I could say this could be a col, or this could be col large 12. And the 12 specifies that it takes up 12 of these blocks. In the next row, you can see that I'm specifying col 4, which takes up 4 blocks, and col 8, which takes up 8 blocks, and so on. So 6 takes up half col-6, col-3 takes up 3 blocks, col-1 takes up 1 block, and there's 3 of them. Now, I don't really want to read off this or rattle it off, but I wanted to demonstrate that col is also used to evenly spread out our blocks. And no matter how many blocks that you add, it will automatically spread them out evenly unless you specify one, and then the other will just fill the space provided. So col 8, and then this one, if it was just col, will automatically fill col 4, but or 4 spaces, but you don't have to specify col 4. So let's play around with our divs. All right, let's copy these down with Option Shift down, down, down. So you can see here that it's responsive. And by responsive, we only have 1 row, but this is on 4 rows. Why is it doing that? Let's close the sidebar. You can see it's changing automatically due to breakpoints. So as I make this bigger, it'll automatically fill. Now this will do this all the way until you have 12 wide, or 12 side by side, and all the way down until you just have 1. Yeah, here we go. And this is the concept of breakpoints and responsive design. Now let's say I wanted to evenly spread this, really. So I can just do col 4. I can make this one, or col 4, and it will automatically break it into 3 spaces. So save. And as I make this larger, you can see that the first box isn't really changing in size until you get to a really small breakpoint. It's different size than the rest because we were specific. I hope that this has been somewhat informative on how divs work without getting too stuck in the weeds on Bootstrap and without getting too stuck in the weeds on the layout. This topic is rather robust, but the main idea here that I'd like to drive home is divs are dividers for logical grouping of tags that are nested inside of them. And you use them to affix an ID or a class, which allows you to target them with your CSS. It can also be used to target with JavaScript, but we're not there yet. Once you get the basic idea of creating rows, and inside the rows creating columns, you can move on to the next exercise. And this is the last exercise for the day. I want you to go to flexboxfroggy.com, and I want you to run through all levels 1 through 24. And as always, go to your resume and update it and specify that you're an HTML professional now. We've covered everything that you need to know to be really good at HTML. And then I want you to go to Twitter and post about what you've learned today. Go to LinkedIn, post about what you've learned today. Don't forget to hashtag 100 days of code, hashtag coding with Drew. And I'll see you in the next section tomorrow. I'll see you there.